Savitha Arunpal lived quietly behind the locked doors of 42 Arawali Lane, while Priyana Kochar, under a false name, slowly tightened her grip on Savitha's life, her wealth, and finally, her death. For 6 years, Savitha's mummified body lay undiscovered in her own bedroom as Priyana continued to drain her bank accounts, live off her fortune, and vanish into a maze of stolen identities. When the truth finally surfaced, it wasn't just a murder case. It was the unraveling of one of India's most chilling true crime stories, at the edge of Pune city. Tucked between overgrown plots and half-finished buildings, stood house number 42 on Arawali Lane. To anyone passing by, it looked like just another abandoned property, paint peeling off the walls, rust forming on the gate, and wild bougainvillea vines curling around the balcony like claws. For 6 long years, nobody had stepped inside. The neighbors barely noticed. In the fast-paced urban life, people are often too busy to wonder why a house remains silent. But behind that silence, something horrifying was waiting to be found. Savitha Arunpal had lived there alone after her husband's sudden death in 2015. She was known in the neighborhood as a private woman, rarely seen, barely heard. The milkman stopped delivering at her door in 2017. The postman stopped leaving letters the same year. Over time, no one questioned her absence. Some said she had gone to live with relatives. Others assumed she had left India altogether, maybe to settle in Dubai or Singapore, where her husband had once worked. Nobody knew the truth because nobody checked. Her gate stayed locked. Her curtains stayed drawn. Life carried on outside the walls of 42 Arawali Lane. Children played cricket in the nearby streets. New shops opened and closed. Neighbors moved away and new ones came, never questioning the silent house at the corner. In a city of millions, one person's disappearance barely made a ripple. That is, until one day in late March, a property tax officer named Ritesh Veller knocked on the door with official papers in his hand. When no one answered, he pushed the gate open and stepped into the overgrown yard. His mission was simple: issue a legal notice for unpaid property tax. But what he found inside was something he would never forget. The house smelled of dust and old wood. The windows were coated in grime, letting in only thin strips of sunlight. Each step Ritesh took echoed in the empty halls. Spider webs hung from the ceilings like fragile curtains. In the kitchen, plates were still stacked in the sink, as if someone had left in a hurry years ago. But there was no sign of life. Not until he reached the bedroom upstairs. When Ritesh opened the door to the master bedroom, he froze. There, lying neatly on the bed, was the body of a woman. Her hands were folded over her chest. Her eyes were closed. Her skin had turned dark and leathery. Her hair stuck to her skull like brittle threads. She was wearing a nightdress, now faded with time. It was clear that this was no ordinary corpse. Her body was perfectly preserved, mummified by the dry air and sealed windows. Ritesh stumbled back in shock, nearly tripping over a broken chair. He immediately called the local police station. Within hours, the house became the center of a crime scene. Forensic experts and police officers crowded the property, snapping photographs, collecting samples, and searching for clues. The media swarmed the street, their cameras flashing as reporters shouted into microphones, telling the nation that a woman's mummified remains had been discovered in her own house after 6 years. Identification was quick. The Aadhaar card found in her bedside drawer confirmed that the body was Savitha Arunpal. But the bigger question was how nobody noticed her death for so long. How had her body stayed hidden in plain sight? And more importantly, who had locked the house from the outside after she died? The investigation was just beginning, but the shock had already rippled through the entire country. People wanted answers. How could this happen in a modern Indian city? How could a woman disappear inside her own home while life outside continued without pause? As police sealed off the house and began to collect evidence, The silent house at 42 Arawali Lane had finally spoken. And what it revealed was only the beginning of a mystery that would soon grip the nation. The police wasted no time launching a formal investigation. The discovery of Savitha Arunpal's mummified body had become national news overnight. Her death wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a mystery that exposed the cracks in the system. How could a woman remain dead inside her own house for 6 years without anyone noticing? The case was handed over to Detective Ishan Gord, a seasoned investigator known for solving cold cases and unraveling complicated crimes. He had seen strange cases in his career, but this one was unlike anything before. Savitha Arunpal wasn't just an ordinary widow living a quiet life. As the police dug into her financial records, a shocking pattern began to emerge. She owned several properties in Pune and Mumbai, inherited from her late husband, who had once been a successful textile exporter. Her net worth, according to official documents, was nearly 7 crore rupees. But when her bank accounts were checked, the balance told a different story. Her accounts had been drained slowly over 6 years. Every month, someone had withdrawn between 30 to 50,000 rupees in cash. The most disturbing part was that the withdrawals had continued long after Savitha's estimated time of death. Forensic experts confirmed she had died around early 2017, yet her savings had steadily disappeared month after month till late 2023. This meant that someone had access to her ATM card and her personal banking information. It wasn't just a case of neglect, it was starting to look like cold-blooded theft. Detective Gord requested security camera footage from the banks where the withdrawals had taken place. Most of the old footage was lost due to standard data deletion policies, but a few clips from the last 2 years were still available. In the grainy CCTV videos, a woman covered in a heavy veil was seen using Savitha's ATM card. The woman always picked quiet ATMs with no guards, and she kept her head low to avoid the cameras. She wore gloves, large sunglasses, and always carried this same gray handbag. Her face was never fully visible. The police now had a new mystery to solve. Who was this veiled woman? Detective Gord interviewed the neighbors again, this time asking detailed questions about Savitha's daily life before she vanished. Most people said the same thing: Savitha was a private person. She rarely spoke to anyone. However, a few of the older residents remembered a woman who had once worked as her caretaker. Her name was Nayara Braganza. She had been hired by Savitha in 2016 to help her recover from a surgery. According to neighbors, Nayara was quiet, polite, and always kept to herself. But after 2017, she vanished along with Savitha. The police ran checks on Nayara Braganza but soon hit a dead end. No government ID was found under that name. No family members came forward. No address was linked to her. It was as if she had never existed. That's when the investigation took a darker turn. Inside Savitha's house, the police found a locked steel cabinet in the basement. After breaking it open, they uncovered 18 diaries written by Savitha herself. The last entry was dated February 2017. In those pages, Savitha described feeling trapped in her own home. She mentioned a woman she called the Crow Woman. According to the diaries, this woman had started controlling Savitha's life, restricting her visitors, managing her bank details, and even deciding what she ate. Savitha's handwriting became shaky toward the end of the diary entries, but the message was clear. She was scared. She wrote about being poisoned slowly. She believed the woman was after her property and wealth. The police were now convinced that the veiled figure in the CCTV footage and the woman in Savitha's diary were the same person. But who exactly was Nayara Braganza? And where had she gone after Savitha's death? The clues were piling up, but answers remained elusive. The police had uncovered financial fraud, identity theft, and potential murder. What had started as a discovery of a mummified body was quickly becoming one of the most disturbing cases in recent Indian history. As the investigation deepened, Detective Ishan Gord and his team focused their attention on the house itself. Savitha Arunpal's home was more than just a crime scene, it was a treasure chest of hidden clues. Forensic experts spent days searching every corner, dusting for fingerprints, collecting samples, and scanning the walls for hidden compartments. The house, though crumbling on the outside, was strangely preserved on the inside, as if time had frozen the moment Savitha died. In the basement, behind the steel cabinet where the diaries had been found, the team made another chilling discovery. Hidden behind loose bricks, they found a small metal box containing Savitha's original property documents, several gold ornaments, and 2 SIM cards. The gold was registered in her name, but the SIM cards were not. One of them had last been active in February 2017, the same month Savitha had died. Call records showed multiple calls made to a single number registered under the name of a woman called Priyana Kochar. Detective Gord's team quickly pulled Priyana Kochar's records. She wasn't from Pune. She was originally from Goa. Her history was full of red flags. She had worked as a private nurse and caregiver for elderly women in Mumbai, Bengaluru, and Hyderabad. But in each case, she had vanished after her clients either died or were moved into nursing homes. There were no formal complaints, but several families had reported missing jewelry and empty bank accounts soon after Priyana's disappearances. The pattern was too familiar. When Savitha hired her caretaker, she had known the woman as Nayara Braganza. But the police now suspected that Nayara and Priyana were the same person, using different names in different cities to hide her crimes. The problem was finding her. Priyana Kochar's last known address in Goa was abandoned. Her mobile number had been inactive for years. Her other information was fake, created using forged documents. She had no known relatives and no active social media. It was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. Determined not to give up, Detective Gord turned to financial records. The team followed the trail of Savitha's missing money. It led to multiple ATM withdrawals, but also to unusual purchases: small land parcels, gold coins, and the rental of a property in a remote area of Himachal Pradesh. The rental agreement was signed under the name Mrs. Nalini Jacob. This was yet another fake identity. However, a background check revealed that the passport photograph used for the rental paperwork matched an older photo of Priyana Kochar from her nursing job in Mumbai. It was a breakthrough. When the police raided the cottage in Himachal Pradesh, they found the place empty. But inside, there were items that left no doubt about the connection. In the bedroom closet, they discovered Savitha Arunpal's missing jewelry, a ruby necklace and diamond earrings worth over 12 lakh rupees. Alongside the jewelry were property documents, forged IDs, and multiple SIM cards under different names. One of the forged identities used the name Ravina Dasgupta, another name that appeared in several bank transactions linked to the missing funds from Savitha's accounts. The walls of the cottage were lined with books on disguise, identity, theft, and forensic countermeasures. It became clear that Priyana Kochar, also known as Nayara Braganza and Nalini Jacob, had been planning her escape for years. Her method was systematic. She befriended elderly women, gained their trust, isolated them, stole their assets, and then vanished before anyone noticed. But with Savitha Arunpal, she had gone a step further, keeping the body hidden while continuing to drain the money long after death. Detective Gord realized he wasn't just chasing the killer. He was chasing a master manipulator who had lived multiple lives under different masks. The trail was cold, but the clues left behind in the house and in the remote cottage were enough to confirm that Priyana Kochar was at the center of the crime. The problem was, nobody knew where she was now. The case had shifted from a single murder to a nationwide manhunt, and the entire country was watching, The deeper detective Ishan Gord looked into Priyana Kochar's background. The darker the case became. She was no ordinary criminal. Her real identity was buried under layers of false names and fake histories. It was like peeling an onion. Every layer revealed something more disturbing. Using old employment records, police found out that Priyana had worked under at least 6 different aliases across India. She had been a nurse in Hyderabad, a caretaker in Bengaluru, a private tutor in Ahmedabad, and a housemaid in Surat. Each time, her employer was an elderly person, usually wealthy and vulnerable. And in almost every case, the same pattern followed. Bank accounts emptied, jewelry missing, and Priyana gone without a trace. One of the most shocking discoveries came from an old neighbor in Mumbai who recognized her photo in the news. According to the neighbor, Priyana had once been arrested in 2009 for financial fraud under the name Anjali Pinto, but was released on bail due to lack of evidence. After that, she disappeared and reinvented herself again. The realization hit. Detective Gord Harg, this woman had been perfecting her con for over a decade. She was a professional predator, preying on the elderly for money, property, and control. Further investigation led the team to a retired police constable in Goa who remembered Priyana Kochar from his early days on the force. He described her as highly intelligent, fluent in multiple languages, and skilled in creating fake documents. Her father had been a forger, her mother a small-time con artist. She had grown up watching fraud happen at the dinner table. It wasn't just survival for her, it was a way of life. But there was something even more sinister. As Detective Gord's team interviewed past employers and neighbors, they noticed a pattern of unreported deaths. Elderly women under Priyana's care had died suddenly, often from supposed natural causes. Since most of the women were old and living alone, no one had questioned their deaths. In at least 3 of those cases, property transfers and will changes had happened shortly before their deaths. The names on the property deeds matched different versions of Priyana's aliases. She had been quietly building wealth, one victim at a time. In Savitha Arunpal's case, she had pushed her scheme further than ever before, keeping Savitha's mummified body in the house while continuing to withdraw. Her money wasn't just about theft, it was about control. By keeping Savitha legally alive on paper, Priyana ensured that no red flags were raised at the bank or in property records. It was the perfect crime, until the unpaid property tax brought the case to light. The police team dug into Savitha's property dealings and found that she had signed a will in 2016, leaving her entire estate to a woman named Nayara Braganza. This will was suspicious because Savitha's old will from 2015 had left her estate to a charitable trust. Forensic analysis showed the 2016 will was likely forged. Priyana had not only stolen money, but had tried to steal Savitha's entire fortune. By faking legal documents. Now, with the pieces coming together, the case took on new urgency. Detective Gord issued a nationwide alert. Airports, bus terminals, and railway stations were given photographs of Priyana under her various aliases. Cyber teams were tasked with tracking any online activity, but Priyana had gone completely dark. No phone calls, no credit card use, no social media. She had disappeared like smoke in the wind. Meanwhile, the public was gripped by the story. News channels ran hourly updates. Newspapers printed her photos under the headline, "India's Female Chameleon." The case wasn't just about Savitha Arunpal. Anymore, it had exposed a serial fraudster and potential serial killer operating in plain sight for years. The country watched in horror as more victims came forward, claiming they too had trusted a woman matching Priyana's description. Detective Gord knew one thing for certain. Until she was caught, no elderly person was truly safe. Months passed, but Priyana Kochar remained missing. Despite nationwide alerts and media attention, she had left no trace of her whereabouts. Her face, disguised under veils and wigs and CCTV footage, became a haunting image that circulated across India. People were terrified. Elderly citizens double-checked their caretakers. Families wondered if someone in their own circle was living under a false name. Priyana had managed to create fear not just in one household, but in an entire nation. Detective Ishan Gord refused to let the case go cold. His team continued to investigate, working through layers of false documents, tracing properties, and interviewing anyone who had ever crossed paths with Priyana. The case files had grown thicker than any other he had handled in his career. Every lead brought more complexity, but no final answer. Then, just when the trail seemed to run dry, an unexpected phone call came in from Jaipur. A private hospital contacted Pune police after a woman was admitted in critical condition following a suspected overdose. She had been found unconscious in a rented apartment under the name Ravina Desgupta. Her landlady grew suspicious after she failed to answer the door for 3 days, and when the police entered, they found her lying on the floor with empty pill bottles beside her. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors struggled to save her life. The hospital, having seen the news about the mummified remains case, alerted the police because the woman matched Priyana's description. Detective Gord flew to Jaipur immediately. Fingerprint analysis confirmed the truth. The woman in the hospital bed was indeed Priyana Kochar. She was alive but in a coma, her body weak from the overdose. Whether it was an attempted suicide or a miscalculated escape plan, no one could say for sure. The police guarded her room around the clock, knowing that if she woke up, she could finally answer for her crimes. But fate had other plans. For weeks, Priyana remained unconscious. Doctors reported minimal brain activity. The legal system prepared for trial, but without her testimony, the full truth might never be known. Still, the evidence was overwhelming. The jewelry found in Himachal Pradesh, the fake IDs, the diaries, and the financial records all pointed to her guilt. The court declared her mentally unfit for trial while in her current condition, but the police officially closed the hunt. The woman who had terrorized elderly victims for years was now in custody. Though silent, Savitha Arunpal was finally given a proper burial. Her relatives, distant and scattered, came forward to claim her remains. The house at 42 Arawali Lane was cleaned out, its windows open for the first time in 6 years. The neighborhood slowly returned to normal, but something had changed forever. The case had left a permanent scar on the community, a reminder of how isolation can hide the worst kinds of crimes. The investigation also sparked national reforms. Banks revised their policies on suspicious ATM activity. Hospitals and elder care agencies were forced to tighten background checks on caretakers. Legal discussions began about creating better welfare checks for senior citizens living alone. The story of Savitha Arunpal became a cautionary tale told in newspapers, news channels, and even crime documentaries across India. For Detective Gord, the case left a heavy weight on his shoulders. There were still unanswered questions. How many more victims had there been? Were there other crimes buried under Priyana's long list of fake names? Those answers may never come. But one thing was certain: Priyana Kochar had orchestrated one of the most complex fraud and murder schemes the country had ever seen. In the end, the woman who once controlled the lives of her victims now lay powerless in a hospital bed, her real identity finally exposed. The case that started with a mummified body hidden in a lonely house had uncovered a shocking web of greed, deception, and manipulation that gripped the nation until its final moment.